Hello everyone, welcome to Bloggers on Web. This is Data Engineering DP2 Not 3. Let's get started. Azure Data Security. So here we are going to look on at how the Azure manages the data encryptions. When you encrypt the data, so exactly what you turn it from the your readable form just as a clear text to the cipher text means unreadable form, so which cannot be read by the unauthorized people are the code without the proper key to decrypt that is the encryption text. So here there are the many situations where the web solutions where the encryptions is very critical. So let's see more on that. When we are talking about the Azure encryption, so here the Azure, how the Azure handles the data encryption. So there are the two ways. There are the two types you can say that Azure handle the data encryptions. So we are going to look basically how the Azure handle the two different types of the data encryptions. So the first will be the encryptions when the data is in a motion, and the second when the data is at rest. So in the motion and in the rest, how the data is getting encrypted, that is handled by the Azure, that we will see here in this topic. So encryption in the motions basically, uh, we are talking about how to protect your data when the data is traveling over the network from the client to server, okay, from the one machine to another machines. You can say that it is travel from between the different server components. So when the data move from one location to another, so means from the one machine to another machine, the data should be encrypted form so that nobody going to tamper the data, and get the informations what is over the network. Okay, so now and the encryption and rest when you're talking about, so what exactly this means, that data is not traveling, the data is in the rest state, means it is stored somewhere else, and when the data is stored in your database or something, so it should also be in the encrypted form so that nobody can access the data and can read the what exactly the information written in the stored data. So these things handled by the Azure. So let's see how it's get handled. When we look for the Azure, how it handles encryptions in motions. So ensure that the encryption, the motions that you need to configure your resources correctly in the Azure. First thing, whatever your resources, that should be properly configured in the Azure, because Azure going to handle your encryptions when the data is in a motion, in a movement. So so these are the best practices for that, the configuration in Azure. So you should configure your the Azure resources to force transport label encryptions, means understood, is it I'm talking about the TCP. This is transport label encryptions we need to force, okay, when in Azure are the HTTP protocols. So HTTPS protocols. So these are the terms. These are the things that we need to exactly focus on. One is the we need to force the Azure resources to transport label encryptions, the HTTPS protocols. So this is the standard encryptions in the motion protocols for the internet. Okay, and that also ensure the data is in the encrypted form when it is in transit. So understand two things. One, we need to focus on the transport layer encryptions, and second, the HTTPS protocol should be used, because these helps to encrypt the data when the data move over the network. Now, when we're talking about the encryption at rest, how the Azure handle these encryption at rest. Now, let look Azure, basically the process for the encryption data at rest in are in a database. Azure resources such as that we're talking about, this is the SQL database encrypt data at rest by default by using the symmetric key encryption key. Those the symmetric encryption key is basically used when the data is stored in SQL database in the Azure. Okay, so this helps to encrypt your data in a SQL. in the storage. So this is the default behavior actually. This key is used basically to encrypt the data when it is written into the database, and decrypt when you going to read it. So what is the important thing? The symmetric encryption key when the data is stored in the SQL database. Okay, in Azure. So this is the transparent to the user of the database. uh, so we can say in another word, it is the default behavior of the server level. This is a very default behavior where the data is getting encrypted. Okay, we're using a symmetric encryption key. Understood? Symmetric encryption key. So these symmetric keys basically are stored on the server. Either it is internally by the Microsoft or optionally in a key vault, that operation is set up for the this purpose. So all the data encryption keys are further secured by the master keys, that is known as the key encryption key. So this encryption at rest behavior is on by default, as we already inform you. And in the Azure storage account, and this cannot be disabled. So important thing, this is the default behavior, and this cannot be disabled. So client do not have do anything special to happen. Okay, so fine. So you just understand the important thing is that when the data is stored in at rest, then we use the symmetric encryption key, which helps to encrypt and decrypt the data. Thank you.